the golden spirit, I'm going to say now. And where we at? All right, good. So this is where we are. So wait a minute. Let's see. Make sure on my notes are okay. Yeah. Okay. All right, good. So I think that number may change a little bit, but it's number 9. And so we are still talking about the Peerless scholarship and work. That's the difference. And work of Imam W. Muhammad. So we're in the right place. Last week we only said the Peerless scholarship of Imam W. Deen Mohammed, rahimahullah. Now we're saying the Peerless scholarship and the work of Imam W. Deen Mohammed. And that's what we're gonna spend time. So this will probably be just the beginning of the work. The essence of the essence and the point of the statement of the Peerless scholarship of Imam W. Deen Mohammed, just that part, which was last week. So it's kind of touch on a slight summary of it. Excuse me, is that something. I just had to get my timer together. And that is, in order for one to be a peer, that's kind of like the laughable statement, if I put it that way, is that you're to be judged by a jury of your peers. It's like that's what the system calls for, right? And so when you see, Billy Ray on trial, and then you look over at the jury, and nobody looked like Billy Ray, and nobody come from where Billy Ray come from. But it's supposed to be a jury of your peers. But let's move past that. So the point is that where is Imam Muhammad's peer? Where is his peer? Because the peer has to do with who's doing the same thing. I'm not going to say anything about it, and I do say that often, but I'm not going to say anything about it. But see, again, back with the glasses of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. So now when you hear that word peer, P-E-E-R, and then there's this place called a peer, P-I-E-R, peer, right? And then you have the idea of peering into this and peering into that. See, this is the kind of thing that a student of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed would reflect. If it's something of significance, it's not like, everything that comes up, yeah, well, let me think about that. Let me think about that. No, when it bears on something significant, right? Because here's one of the tools in the tool belt of Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. Wherever there's a homonym, there's a synonym. Wherever there's a homonym, there's a synonym. So if it sounds like there's something about it that makes those two sounds, because they're two words that have the same phonemes, if you will, that, okay, how did they wind up with the same sound? And then that's where the research comes in. But let's draw back. Okay, so the Imam has no peers. Who? Why? Because nobody's been through what he's been through. Nobody has addressed the problem that he has addressed in the way that he's addressed it. You have to go back to history, find the same set of circumstances, and find the one who addressed the set of circumstances that were like and analogous to the circumstances that Imam Muhammad addressed. Where in the world has there ever been any circumstance like the circumstance of the so-called American Negro? Where? In what history? You start wherever you want to start. Okay, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's like, so yeah, that's why he has no peers. So you can't compare Ghazali and Farabi and all the work that they did. And let's move on to that. To restate, everybody had their lane, I'm going to say, because this is common language parlance for us. They had their lanes, right? Islamic history is rich with distinguished scholars who have made unique contributions, and here are some of the notable figures and their unique contribution. Ibn Sina, known as Avicenna, medicine and philosophy. El-Khwarizmi, whose name gives us algorithm, right? Mathematics and astronomy. El-Farabi, philosophy and political science, Ibn Haytham, optics and science, El-Ghazali, theology, philosophy, those are in quotes, and mysticism. And mysticism is not a bad thing. Just when we talk about mystery, right? Mystery, right? See, there you go. Imam Warith Deen Mohammed, mystery, right? Mist. What was the mist sound? Mist. It's mist. What's fog made of? Mist, right? You got to go into the fog to try to see what's in the fog, and it's foggy and it's confusing, and it's hard to get a grasp of. Blah, blah. It's mystic. It's like mist, right? And then you have mystery. What's the mystery? You missed the story. It's humorous, and that's where the fun and that's where the entertainment. But it's true. Why is something a mystery? Because you missed the story. But once you know the story, it's no longer a mystery. It's mystery. Mystery is a missed story. That's why our condition is a mystery, because we missed the story. Somebody has to come and tell us the story, take away the clouds of confusion about our story, give it a context, and now it's no longer a mystery, right? So we demystify, right? So mysticism has to do with going into those cloudy areas. So much from the Quran could be said about this. Going into those cloudy areas and grasping and bringing the concrete out of the abstract. That's what. Let's move on. So Rumi, poetry and Sufism. Again, there's a positive and there's a negative element to Sufism. Again, the way that it is embraced and related and presented. Again, people do it right. Some people do it wrong. So Rumi, poetry and Sufism, poetry the same. Ibn Khaldun, sociology and history. Arazi, medicine and chemistry. All these scholars represent diverse and rich contributions to the Islamic, or in the Islamic golden age, for the global knowledge pool, each one of them leaving a lasting legacy in their respective fields, right? So people want to say, oh, he's not a scholar. Ibn Sina is a scholar. Al-Khwarizmi is a scholar. Al-Farabi is a scholar. But, hey, look, they were working on what they were working on, and none of them ever met a Negro. Some of them might meet a Negro and say, well, somebody do something with this Negro. So I hope y'all having fun, because I'm always having fun when you talk about Negroes, mashallah, and especially when we see them rise up and evolve. Additionally, it's understood that established Islamic cultures, regardless of their ethnic and national origins, they have their own centuries-old project. Everybody got a project. Go back to each one of those scholars' people. Who are their people? See, there's no nationality, there's no ethnicity tied to these names that we're given. But you can go look at their history, and one was from this country, another one was from that country, another one from that country. Now you look at the context in which they operated, look at where the Muslims were at that time, etc. That was the world that they were working at. Their peers are those who worked on the same thing in the same environment, under the same circumstances that they worked on. Those are their peers. So each one of them, to some extent, is peerless unless you can identify who's working in the same scheme, right? So it's like you would have to compare. Let's go back. Let's make that a little plainer. All right, so Ibn Sina, right? Who are the peers of Ibn Sina? You go back to the time, place, location, subject matter that Ibn Sina was working with, and then whoever was doing that at the same time in the same place, those are his peers, right? Then you scale him inside of that. That's like trying to compare centers and guards in basketball, right? Or offensive linemen to quarterbacks in football. It's like, no, this is apples and oranges. It's like you can't say how does so and so match up with Tom Brady. Well, so and so is a center on the defensive line, and Tom Brady is a quarterback. I said, well, Tom Brady is greater than. No, they're not in the same position, and so they can't be compared. Okay, it's the same thing. So therefore, the same thing can be said about each one of these in their respective field. You are not judging apples to apples and oranges to oranges until you deal with the field in the place, in the time, and in the circumstances, because at a given time, certain amount of knowledge is available in some of these things that weren't available in prior times. And so therefore there were moves that were able to be made by those who came later that couldn't be made by those who came before. It doesn't necessarily mean that those who came later were better than those who came before, because those who came later, Isaac Newton, standing on the shoulders of giants, those who came later benefited by what came before them, right? So this is what we have to understand. So as to not get wrapped up. I have my emotional sentiments, EVEDA, about this matter, because the unfairness, and I'm going to say the ignorance, and I'm just going to speak to the innocent ignorance of people who have simple categorization of whoever is a popular quote unquote name that is connected with Islamic knowledge, then they are a scholar. And so if you're not a name that's connected with the population, or that's popular, whatever, in social media, whatever it is right now, it's like, well, no, they must not be a scholar. You're stupid, right? Let's move on. So additionally, it is understood in Islamic cultures, they all have their own centuries-old projects of Islamic survival and expansion into the modern world. Therefore, in a manner of speaking, solving the peculiar Negro problem with al-Islam was and is an orphan project in the Islamic world. Just come on. Those people who reject the Ahmadiyya, there are those that Ahmadiyya are not Muslims. Just like there are those who say Shia are not Muslim. Okay. All that's going, this is the benefit of being an ex-Negro. It's like, okay, well, that's y'all problem. I ain't got that same problem y'all got. Y'all been riding with that problem for 1,000 years. I don't have to ride with that. I don't. Right? So it's like, okay. So it hasn't been a Shia, problem in the interest of solving the peculiar Negro problem in al-Islam for all the lifetime since the time of the claiming of the name Shia. Is like, let's go help the Negroes. It's like, no, we got our own problems, and ain't even nobody asking, right? Same way with the Sunnis, which we reject both of those labels. As definitive. Okay, there's a background conversation to that. There's Muslim and there's al-Islam, and there's different perspectives of that. And وَرَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ مَنْ هُوَ أَهْدِ سَبِيلًا, 1784. And Allah knows the one that's best guided on the way. So there's Ahmadiyyas that say this about Shia, and there's Shia that say this about Sunni, and there's Sunni that say this about Shia and Ahmadiyya. Your Lord is the one who knows who's best guided on the way, right? So don't get caught up, right? So the point is that it's just a standing fact that Chinese Muslims, Russian Muslims, African Muslims, Muslims in the islands, wherever there may be in the Middle East, in America, everybody got their own set of issues. And so therefore, as far as solving the peculiar problems of the Negro with al-Islam, that hasn't been a scholarly project for 1,400 years. All right. So with regard to the problem of the American Muslim identity in this country, in the post-9/11 world, the Muslims of America need an authentically American Islamic scholarship, distinctly addressing its citizens and the American national and geopolitical position. Just think about it. It's like, who's more fit to deal with the ethos and the culture and the nature of the ethos and culture than someone who was born in it and someone in whom it was born in them? But then they come to a place where they actually transcend that. You can only change something by becoming independent of it, right? So that's a long, rich conversation there too. Okay, so the point is, this is what's needed in America now, and it was needed then, before now. So an authentically American Islamic scholarship distinctly addressing its citizens and the American national and geopolitical position inflected, meaning that when you do what you do, only inflect what you're doing by the Quran and the life model of Prophet Muhammad, and that understood and applied in the American context. That's real. I mean, it can be, no doubt. I'm not going to call it. I'm not going to call it perfect because I haven't put it through another this statement through a wash, but it's to get the gist of the idea is that what is the scholar for the American life, A, and then what is the scholar for the American life of the so-called American Negro becoming a Muslim. So he's raised in his environment, experimental clinic. He was there. He was brought out of it, came into Al-Islam. He, in the world as it exists right now and the future that he is aiming at, what is the best prescription for him / her vis-a-vis with Al-Islam? It's like you take the Quran and life model of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, like a pharmacy, right? All the rich knowledge that's available in the Quran and in the life model of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the pharmacy. Okay, here's your patient that needs to be healed of whatever. Caucasians need a different kind of healing. American Caucasians who become Muslims, they don't need the Negro prescription. They need a prescription for Caucasians who was raised in Beverly Hills 90210, whatever it was. It's like, oh, but now she's a Muslim. Now he's a Muslim. It's like, come on now, you can't don't spend a lot of time talking to him about, Yaqub's history. This is where, in America. No, hey, give me the, I'm sorry. Give me the Wonder Bread version. That's just a little humor. give me the version that I need to have, because things I don't know about how America has been relating to Al-Islam, and it don't all have to come through the Malcolm door and all the rest of that. Let's move on. So that said, that is that there's something peculiarly necessary. Let me give you this example, an illustration that's easy to hold on to. Okay, and that is there's no such thing as a plain book. There's no such thing as a plain fish. Whatever. There's no such thing as a plain tree. No such thing. There's no such thing as plain ice cream. That's always one that say, oh yeah, what is plain ice cream? There's no plain ice cream, right? Some people may think, well, vanilla is plain ice cream, right? So it's like, let's say, for example, okay, there's plain ice cream. So before you put the vanilla flavor in, there's plain ice cream. Okay, question. And what does it taste like? What does it taste like? It's ice cream, right? So it's flavorless, right? So that ain't ice cream. Say, oh, give me a scoop of that ice cream. You get it, and there's no flavor. What is this, right? Okay, so there's no such thing, plain ice cream, plain tree, plain fish, plain book, except why? There's no such thing as a plain Muslim. No such thing as a plain Muslim. All the things that human being is comes with them into Al-Islam. And Al-Islam is going to respond and treat and benefit those people in accordance with the way that they relate to Al-Islam and how they interpret and grasp and understand and receive and internalize Al-Islam as it reflects and impacts their life, the life that needs to be held on to and moved forward, and their life, the part that needs to be purified and corrected, right? And so that's going to be different for an Arab. It's going to be different for an African. It's going to be different for an Asian. It's going to be different even for a Jew that becomes a Muslim, and a Christian that becomes a Muslim, and even a Hindu that becomes a Muslim, and an atheist that becomes a Muslim, all of them call for unique prescriptions of embraces of Islam, because there are different things that need to be healed, that need to be purified in them. Okay, listen now, listen. I say again, and this is a part of the divine hand in this. We're gonna get to the end. I'm telling you, this is, I don't know when. This is the biggest thing. Let's stay here. There there has never been a Negro ever, ever. There has never been a system that operated upon the people that became Negroes in the world, in history, ever, ever. Slavery nowhere was even, in the smallest way, comparable to what existed in America with the same label. It shouldn't even have the same label, but it's called slavery. Yeah. So, all right, to an extent we've already covered this, but the ethics of Farad, why he had to do what he had to do in the way that he did it. Why? Because there's never been anything like Negro. Okay, so this again, this is to reinforce emphatically, you cannot step up to the Negro, the product of that system, and just say all you need to do is just be a Muslim. Oh, we just need plain Islam. We don't need nothing. There is no such thing as just plain Islam. Islam arises and presents itself from some human being who has a life and had a life before they came into their consciousness of Islam. So therefore, who's the scholar to deal with the Negro, and who is better suited to deal with that problem than someone who came from, quote unquote, the problem? All right. Let's move on. So all that statement there is got to be that these are all the boxes that have to be checked, and you can break that sentence down, and I'm looking at it. That is one sentence, mashallah. I'm gonna put it to Grammarly and see if it's appropriate, but it seems it works for me. Moving on. Furthermore, an African American Muslim scholar can be deemed such only to the extent that they effectively address the peculiar needs of African American Muslims, which were born of their modern ethnic history, which continues to demand a distinct new articulation of al-Islam for their life in this country at this time. All right. So we're talking about peers. Who is Imam Muhammad's peer? Just you think about it. Any names, whatever. Go to social media, boo, 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 put it in. African American Muslim scholars. Put it in there. All right. And then see who's are those his peers? Many of them, I count them as friends. Some of them I've never met, no doubt. Some of them I have met, and on levels of scholarship that you might be surprised. Maybe some of you won't be surprised, but there are others who say, him? Yeah. So, alhamdulillah, this is no boast. I'm kind of in a jovial mood this morning. So in terms of peer, he doesn't have peer. Because listen, most of those that you're talking about, most of them has either been influenced by, let's take Malcolm, but who influenced Malcolm? Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. Right? Read his autobiography. He said, I agree with Warith Deen Mohammed, but who I often refer to for information and advice. I've always trusted him. What? Who's saying this? Malcolm X. right? El Hajj Malik Shabazz, rahimahullah alayh. All right. So everybody on the African American scholarship tree, there might be what if they're deemed to be scholars. I would be, I'm saying it's not absolutely positively that everyone is going to in some way be connected with the branches of the former Nation of Islam. But if when you find one, if you know one, throw them up, and they are deemed to be scholars in this dispensation, even if it's not Arab scholars, but they're scholars among Bilalians, so-called African Americans, and let's see if they're peers. No, it's like no, it's like they would have to have done and have to come through what Imam Muhammad came through, what he did. It's like February 26, 1975 is unprecedented wherever. Stop it. Where? It's like, where? Where did the beginning of the conversion of millions, yes, to Al-Islam, and the tens of thousands that day made that turn? It's like the Qiblatain, right? The two Qiblas, right? There's a masjid called Masjid Qiblatain that if you go on Hajj, Umrah, usually you run into it. And it's like the Muslim would bend over and ruku, and then the word was given that the Qibla had changed to Mecca from Jerusalem. The Muslims, they in ruku and they changed just like that. That's what happened February 26, 1975 with Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. Come on, it's like there isn't, and you should understand that there is a big interest in those and others who would want to suppress the significance of that, the historic significance and the power of that. They want to minimize that and ignore it, and blot it out, talking about the changing of history and decontextualizing the narrative. Why? It's like, nah, this thing is like nothing else. And it's the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, let's move on. So, all right. So that's so much for that. Now to talk about, okay, so we set aside the peerlessness of, when I say set aside, I consider it addressed, at least at this level. The Imam has no peers. He has no peers. Arab, African American, Caucasian, Indian, Pakistani, blah, he has no peers. And I'm saying it's for objective reasons, which I've tried to give. Objectively speaking, he can have no peers because they would have to have these attributes. There's a thing, it's called the privilege of the normal case, right? If you want to say this is a moth and this is a butterfly, right? Then you have to have the standards yourself. So you find this species of creature, it looks for all intents and purposes like it's either a moth or a butterfly. Okay, but since you're being, I don't know what the name, but I don't know if they're called entomologists. Y'all look it up. Entomologists, whoever wants to study insects, whatever level category that butterflies and moths fall into. Okay, so you found one. You're in the deep forest, in the deep rainforest, and we've never seen one like this. So okay, so now you bring it back to the lab, what have you. What is this? Okay, well, you need the privilege of a normal case. If you want to say it's a moth, then you need to know what is this, what are the powers, the attributes, the qualities, the process of evolution, i.e. from larvae to full adult, and it's mature and healthy, what do they look like? Okay, so we take one and then we compare it. No, it lacks this, that, and that butterflies have, so it must not be a butterfly because otherwise it would have that. Okay, well, maybe it's a moth. Okay, it's moth. Okay, this. Yeah, it has those qualities, but it doesn't look like any of the moths we have. It doesn't matter. It has all those other qualities. So it's a moth. It's a new kind of moth, right? So the point is, you need to know what an adult, healthy, mature member of the species that you're talking about in order to say if it belongs in that category, right? So if you say that Imam Muhammad is not a scholar, why? Because you're comparing Imam Muhammad to another thing that you have decided this is what a scholar is. But what makes that scholar, quote unquote, what makes that scholar the rule or the paragon or the archetype or whatever, the privileged case for scholars? And I've already tried to tell you, it's like, no, all these others that are identified as scholars, they were simply workers in a particular area, and so they're scholars in that area. But I'm not going to be redundant on that. Let's move on. So the Imam is peerless. And here's the thing. Each one of those scholars that we mentioned before, granting the scholarship of that, but also not limiting scholarship to just whoever is well-known, popular, published, etc. No, that's not that publishing and recognition a scholar does not make, right? So it is the problem that they were addressing and how successful they are at addressing that problem, right? Einstein, Isaac Newton, and whoever else. What problem were they addressing? How successful were they at addressing that problem? Well, that is how you define who's a scholar of that particular domain, right? And only those who are operating in the same domain and whose success can be measured against what the ultimate goal is, only those can be considered to be peers because they're working on the same thing, quarterback to quarterback, receiver to receiver, guard to guard, blah, blah. All right. So Imam Muhammad was working on a problem nobody else was working on, right? The prime problem that Imam Warith Deen Mohammed faced as the successor of Elijah Muhammad, may Allah forgive his shortcomings and grant him paradise, as successor of Elijah Muhammad, as the leader of the Nation of Islam, well, this is the problem that he faced. It's just, let's walk slow, inshallah. Okay, he was a successor of Elijah Muhammad, not takeover, not a coup. Elijah Muhammad put him on that before Elijah Muhammad died. And everybody knew that, and everybody got that, okay? But everybody didn't, quote unquote, accept that. You had hypocrites who did this, but that's another story. So the prime problem that he was faced with as the successor of Elijah Muhammad and as the leader of the Nation of Islam, he got a peculiar set of problems. This is a deal, man. Let's go. Was one, how to transition the organization from its Black supremacist ideology and symbolic language, which were deeply embedded in its members' psychological framework. Do you understand the mind that Imam W.D. Muhammad, 41 years old, to speak to a people, address and lead and gain the acceptance of a people who have, in most cases, for 40 years, been following Elijah Muhammad, which by most in all definitions would be considered a cult leader, and believing that he, Elijah Muhammad, was acting on orders of the God, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet, God of the universe, Farad Muhammad, the one master of the 25,000 year writing of Quran and Bible, and sits as the leader of the 25 wise scientists, la, 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 la. Wallace D. Muhammad, 41 years old. Just look at who you know is 41 years old. And imagine, could they handle just looking at that? You ain't even detailed the problem. Just look at, okay, you're up. So that's what that 41-year-old W.D. Muhammad was faced with. Alhamdulillah. The Imam said somebody else said it, but the statement is that he was born for the mission. Come on now. If you can't see that movie, it's like you're not seeing. Now that, just imagine that moment when our hero, quote unquote, rises to the stand to step into the position that he'd been cultivated for, with all the ups and downs, the excommunication and returns and the excommunication and return. And now that moment arrives where it's time for him, after his father passes, to take the mantle. forget Britain and kingdom changes and the man, that's a different thing. So okay, so which were deeply embedded in the member side. That was the problem that he was. Here's your problem, and to move that group of people to a more authentic understanding of Orthodox Islam, you know, I mean, just fathom that work. Many mergers, they have M&A in investments. M&A is mergers and acquisitions, right? So one company buys another company, and so now you got, executive vice president from this country, executive vice president, and this bureaucratic setup here, and this way of doing things over here. But now that is owned by a new company comes to own each one or the other, either way. Many of them, and I don't have the statistic, but I would be surprised if it's not that the majority of them, I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know have the stat, fail, right? I can say easily many of them fail. Why? Because just couldn't make the transition in the acquisition, couldn't do the merger, conflict of cultures, conflict of ethos, conflict of whatever. Here comes Imam Muhammad to the ex-Negro that has just had a 40-year full dose of WD-40 prescription from his lab. And now the Imam got to stand up and say, you know what? Most of what you've been told is not the truth. Okay? He had to do that. And who was on his team? Who did Imam Muhammad walk through the door? Okay, we got this, with DMX, stop, drop, shut him down, open up shop. That he didn't say it that way, but that's really what happened. But who was he riding with? God. It's like, okay, I'm here. This is what's happening. And he's mashallah, he's blasting all the way. So where we at? So embedded in its member psychological framework to a more authentic understanding of Orthodox Islam. This was a complex task. This is the scholar, Imam Warith Deen Mohammed. This is the problem that he had to solve. I mean, we're talking, okay, you have to cure cancer. Okay? You have to cure heart disease. Okay? Go to work. All right? This was the complex problem. Nothing more complex than this. This was a complex task, because the Nation of Islam had developed a unique belief system that was heavily influenced by symbolic and mythological narratives that were far from mainstream Islam. I mean, come on. It's like, that's what Imam Muhammad had to do, and the few words that we're going to continue to take a few minutes. I can slow down. Yeah, I'm thinking that we had a little less time than we actually do. But you need to take that in and understand that, because you can't talk about peers and scholarship vis-a-vis or as it relates to Imam Warith Deen Mohammed, you can't talk about that without talking about, okay, who solved a problem like that? Who was working on a problem like that? I won't even go into the parody of those who anyone might say, yeah, we did that because there were people who used to be Negroes. Look at them now. They really was. Yeah, look at them now. Let's move on. So, mastering the symbolic language, decoding the language of the Nation of Islam. So we're going to begin to just talk about the work. So here we are with peerlessness. That all the comments to this point, they still had to do with, let's get clear that Imam Muhammad has no peer. He doesn't have any peer. That's not just rhetoric. That's concrete, scientific, biological, taxonomical, say it however you want to say it. It's like, no. Go get whoever you got and stand them next to Imam Muhammad, check the boxes. But that'll be redundant for me to go back over that. Imam Muhammad tackled this challenge By decoding, now we're talking about his work. He tackled this challenge by decoding and unraveling the symbolic language and teachings of his father's mentor, W.D. Farad, which had trapped, and intentionally so, it was designed to be a magnetic hold, a jig, if you will, for the so-called Negro because of the particular operation that he needed. So, unraveling the symbolic language and teaching of his father's mentor, W.D. Farad, which had trapped the followers in a mystical maze, right? Mystery, right? A mystical maze. He then worked to free them from this ideological confinement while guiding them towards the more traditional teachings of Islam. MashaAllah, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. So, yeah, in 2018, I had open heart surgery, right? Whatever the four valves that were going into the heart, and it's a congenital. It's from a congenital, meaning it's a, let's just call it a weak. They're weak valves, weak arteries, weak whatever the veins. They're thinner than so. You get a lot of cholesterol and a lot of whatever else in there. It's like, okay, now you already got. But of course, I didn't know all that. But in any case, it's like, okay, so that's a particular. So then you just think about. I mean, what kind of science had to go into that to open you up? I'm not trying to gross you out. I'm just saying it's like open you up. You got your heart. Something else has to do while the operation is going on. Something else has to do what your heart normally does for you. So some machine that has been decided that okay, we have what can do work as a substitute for the heart while we fix and take this from there and take that from there and patch this in there and patch that in there and then quote unquote close it up and bring it back. And I thank Allah is success, right? But it's like, okay, obviously there had to be situations and occasions where they weren't a success. And early on in the whole process of evolving technology and evolving skill sets and evolving knowledge, they said, no, we got that wrong. Rest in peace, right? So it's like, but then get to this point. So the point is, what do you have to know? What do you have to know in order to build technology that can substitute that function? What do you have to know in order to be someone to operate with that? You didn't develop the technology, but you had to be quote unquote smart enough and skilled enough to use the technology while you are doing this particular operation. Oh, you're going to lose the patient. Imam Muhammad. Now you got you got patients who walked away dead, or they remain, they reverted to type, whatever. But I dare say Imam Muhammad never lost a patient. I may be people who walked away from Imam W.D. Muhammad, but he never lost a patient. They just weren't patient enough to be a patient. Okay, so so I'm trying to get the point that the Imam he did that was a surgical a y'all find another big word to amplify the term surgical operation, a bigger adjective for that, because that's an operation. This is the first time this operation has ever been performed. And the imam said he's success. I'm a witness. He was successful. The operation only took place one time. And people don't want to acknowledge that I'm going to use the English term that was what I think the Arabic term I think is ajim, I believe, is like sometimes gets translated as a miracle, right? So uh, that's a miracle. That is a miracle. There are people who are living products of that miracle. And again, just like, oh, he's not a scholar and that's not a miracle. Okay, so that's because of the glasses that you're wearing, and that's because of the lens that you're seeing this through, and that's all it means to you. Masha, we're not arguing it. We're just laying this down for history. But like, nah, Negroes never happened but one time. The transition of the becoming of the Nation of Islam and the transition out of the Nation of Islam, it's only happened one time. Imam Muhammad was the only operator that brought about that transformation. Only happened one time, and that's why we use this title, The Last Resurrection. There's no third resurrection to look for. There is none. The thing you should be looking for is, it's an English term, but it's the Renaissance. You're not seeing it, because what happens after Imam Muhammad successfully does this operation, and that successful operation restores the link between the once dehumanized so-called American Negro, and they get attached again to the original flow, right? I was watching this video of a woman. They were talking about a woman, and she's like, just imagine somebody with a large water tank, a huge water tank, but the valve on the water tank had broken in a way where it's not functioning in a way. But what the valve had to be replaced in order to get it to function in the right way. So they had the woman. She knocked the broken nozzle, the dysfunctional nozzle. She broke that off, and then she had the other nozzle to put on there. And I mean that Caucasian. She's like knuckle down with it, like with them boots on. She had that big, big fire hose level, not because the water was coming out in this massive kind of way. So the large opening that the pressure from the water pushing it down on that. So she had to get that nozzle on there and get that on so as to like she handled that. She locked it down. So it's like now the function is there. So now listen, the force of all human history, the force of the bottled up DNA, suppressed, the bottled up potential, the bottled up human potential that had been suppressed in the confinements of the peculiar institution of slavery, and then after that, the mystical maze of Farad, and then now all that force is bottled up behind that. And what has to be done is those obstacles, those obstructions had to be removed. And then after that's removed, then the way by which it can be used in a more functional way, because all the potential is there, and all the developments that come even from them through the oppression, it's there, but it's not connected to operating in the society as it is right now. And it has to be mitigated in a certain. Listen, if people get in touch with and they open the gates of that contact by artificial means, it will come out in a very destructive way, not in a constructive way. It will manifest, it will go out in a blaze of glory, but it will not have accomplished what God wants that potential to accomplish in the world for those people and for the future of the world. The solution to the Negro problem is not just a solution for the Negroes. The solution to the Negro problem is a solution for the world. Yeah, I know you can sense it. That's your reality in contemporary time of the Christ nature. Yeah, and that's the reality. When you get a chance, I'm not going to say anything about it, but to say this, there's a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, Bilal is a ship. You just go look it up. You got all these different sources online. But find hadith. Bilal is a ship. And then put on your W.E. Muhammad glasses and look at what the prophet is saying about that, right? I will say one thing, just to help you out, to put you in a direction, right? If Bilal is a ship, you don't have to confine yourself to. In fact, it would be wrong for you to stay with the concrete, but you abstract from the analogy. Okay, and the prophet does say something in the hadith about the why he's a ship, but the point is he's using symbolic or figurative language, right? Okay, so now from where we stand, alhamdulillah, again, like standing on the shoulders of giants, we don't have to stop there. That's the beginning. And you say, okay, go along with this. Okay, so therefore now, and this is later in the rise. This is, I don't know how many chapters down, but this is, let's call it a teaser preview, whatever. If Bilal is a ship, Bilal is also an archetype. Bilal is an archetype. So in psychological, philosophical, scientific terms, even mythological terms, archetype is Archetype, archetype. When you break that up, you get a whole lot of other stuff. But ark is in it, right? And what is ark? Ark is a ship. It's a ship that's built according to the design of God, right? So Bilal is a ship. Bilal is an archetype. Bilal is an archetype. And when you read what the Prophet says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it should be easy for you to say Bilal is an archetype. And in W. Muhammad language, it's like he's a type of ark. He's a type of ark. And what does the ark do? It saves the world. Come on now. How you get there from there? Just putting on the W. Muhammad glasses. Don't let anybody put down him because they would never arrive at that thought. They would never arrive at that thought without that. And you can say, well, that's not true, but you're wrong. Yeah. The salvation of the so-called American Negro coming to embrace al-Islam in the proper way is not just the salvation of the so-called American Negro, it's the salvation of the world. Because the world is trapped by the master narrative of white supremacy, which again goes back to why slavery has never not existed on United States soil or what have you, and with whatever the cast, the Isabel Wilkerson book, and also Gunnar Myrdal. We never got to that, but Gunnar Myrdal on the Negro Problem, I think is the name of it. The point, the caste system. We've been a part of the caste system, and it's like when the Negro gets out of the caste system and can explain and understand and look back and know where the caste system comes from and what's the grounds of it and the foundation of it, which is what Farad demonstrated. I know the game, I know the trick. I did. It's like a magic trick. Somebody saw a magic trick, and nobody else understood the magic trick. Nobody, but somebody in the audience said, "Oh, I know how he did it. Watch this." Then they go do the same thing, but it's not white, it's black. And that means I know the game, I know the trick, I know the hook, I know the science, and I'm going to give that science, I'm going to use that science to reverse everything that your trick has set up. Okay, but then once that's done, now what? Because once you get connected with that sacred history and that sacred nature and that sacred path and that sacred life, what does it do? What does it do? That's when the Renaissance comes about. But there's still more to say regarding, still more to say regarding um, this transformation, the psychological transformation. But that's another chapter. Let's close this out. Okay, so this required a delicate balance of maintaining connections with their past. So the Imam this is his prescription. That is, this is what he had to prescribe for. This is what he had to do. To work to free them from the ideological confines while guiding them towards the more traditional teachings of Islam, doing both things at the same time. And to do this required a delicate balance of maintaining connections with their past, because the idea is not to cut you off from, and there are those who bring you come into Al-Islam with and through the door that they hold open for you. I'm speaking about Bilalians, I'm speaking about African Americans, etc. They come into Al-Islam. One of the things that these people do when they bring you through their doors, not all of them, but most of them bring you through because they can't help it. They are who they are, and they know what they know. They see how they see. They have the disposition they have. It's all right. They can be absolutely, positively, totally innocent, but they still are not the ones to get you home. All right. I'm sure that there's so many movies and stories and parables that make that point. It's like, look, I know you mean well, but no matter how well you mean to do this, you are just not capable. It's just not in the nature of things as it relates to us and you, for you to get me home for my life and for you to connect me with my reality as intended by God for me. You can't do it no matter how much you love me. You can't do it. It's not in you to do. Okay? But so many Bilalians, they'll embrace Al-Islam through other doors, and then all they become is an imitation of the one who brought them through the door. And okay, that's my time. So, and that's a problem. So it's like, but we ain't hating that somebody. Some people think, oh yeah, y'all just jealous of scholar X, scholar Y. No. I'm concerned that even though you think you think you got on a safe water vehicle, that thing got a serious leak in it as it relates to you. Let's move on. So this required a delicate balance of maintaining connections with their past while leading them into a new religious and cultural identity grounded in the Quran and Prophet Muhammad's teaching, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That statement right there. This is the project. This is the problem, right? Imagine somebody coming into ownership of real estate, right? They come into ownership of real estate, all right? And all the different things that they have to think about in order to restore this property to its working and habitable state and condition. And they have to do that inside of the regulatory environment of the environment and say, okay, well, look, you can't do this because of the laws. You can't do that because of the homeowners association. You can't do that because of the nature of the structure. You can't do that because when this house was originally built, they were using copper and not whatever kind of piping it is right now. It's like, okay, it's yours, go to work. Well, that's the nature of Imam Muhammad's situation. Okay, so we'll go on to the next things next week. For me right now, I'm going to go ahead and cut off.